He didn't fit in real well at Heritage Christian School.
I remember him many times talking to his parents, like wanting to go to public school. I have to get out of there. A couple months into 10th grade, Brian ended up leaving, and his parents sent him to the local high school nearby.
When he came to Glen Oak, he was at a disadvantage because, you know, all the other kids had grown up and had gone through all these classes at all the other schools together. So he was kind of odd man out.
I think he always felt like he was a little different.
He never associated himself with any certain group.
He didn't neatly fit into any of the stereotypes that we know of from those years in high school, being a burnout or a jock.
I think Brian had trouble relating to the other kids because I think he was more intelligent.
He really started to excel in his writing classes. He was a bit of a Renaissance man. I mean, he dabbled in a lot of things. Poetry, he painted, he drew.
There was a drawing that was kind of scary looking, to be honest with you. I couldn't believe they printed it in the yearbook on the same page with apples and the koala bear. It just didn't fit. It just looked somewhat satanic.
What I remember most about Brian, I guess, is his year-round tan.
Dermatologists recommended that he use a tanning bed because it helped dry up his complexion.
He was insecure about his face.
He'd primp a lot with his hair. It was the big thing about his hair. His hair had to look good.
He was really kind of obsessed with the way he looked.
His parents were real easygoing. You would go to his house and there was no rules whatsoever. His mom used to take us to the drive-thru and buy us beer.
Her opinion was, you're going to get your hands on it anyways. I'd rather that you were supervised while you're drinking than out there getting into trouble and maybe getting arrested by the cops.
His parents basically let him do whatever he wanted. His dad was pretty comical.
Well, Uncle Huey, he's got a warped personality. He'll say anything he can to shock you.
Whenever some of our friends would come around and meet Brian's dad for the first time, he always had a trick, perverted question he would ask you.
He'd look at you and just say, "So, have you ever tasted a better pecker than mine?"
Either way you answered, you lost.
Anything to shock you. That's kind of the way Brian is.
He moved away the summer we graduated from high school.
His father got a job offer down in Florida.
Everybody knows Ohio's 10 years behind the times. So I think when he got to Florida, he did have a little bit of culture shock.
His plans were to go to college there for journalism.
He was a good writer. I think a big part of being a good writer is feeling it or having a love for it, and unquestionably he had that. Brian's niche was to write entertainment stories.
He really concentrated on the progressive scene in South Florida, all of the local bands.
I would have liked him to get more involved with the student newspaper, but I knew that he was writing for one of the local papers.
25th Parallel was an arts and entertainment magazine that was geared primarily towards South Florida, sort of an alternative press kind of thing. He came to the interview and he had a lunchbox with him. Well, in the world I come from, people don't carry lunchboxes when they're in college. He would come up with these ideas for articles interviewing dominatrixes or waitresses who worked at topless restaurants. He had a real head for that sort of stuff. And as he improved, he moved on to things like celebrity interviews. He did an interview with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. He was just so enthused about meeting this person. At that time, his ultimate dream was to be Trent Reznor. And he was just so thrilled. Oh, I got along so well with him. Oh, yeah, we're best buddies. And I'm thinking in my mind, you know, I'm willing to bet money that Trent Reznor won't remember you like a week later.
He started writing a lot more poetry at that time.
It was sort of bleak, unfriendly.
Humorous with a dark undertone.
Punk rock without the sense of humor. They had open mic nights for poetry reading.
First time I saw Brian do an open mic, I heard him say, you know, I wrapped our love in foil, and so it wouldn't spoil, but flies will lay their eggs. Pretty heavy.
I think that just writing prose and poetry as expressions were not getting him the attention he wanted or expected.
Writers don't get instant gratification the way musicians do. That kind of got to him.
Let's be honest, you know, poetry is doesn't come in as sexy a package as rock lyrics. The best way to get his attention is to do it within rock.
A lot of the bands that he interviewed, they had something that people wanted to talk about.
Just kind of realized, hey, I've got as much talent and I've got things I want to say. Why am I on this side of the pencil, I think is what he started asking himself.
He came to me and he said, I'm going to start a band. I remember my reaction was, you got to be kidding.
He didn't play any instruments and wasn't musically inclined. I was the other half. I was musically inclined. So I needed a partner, basically. We would just talk on the phone and talk about crazy ideas as far as pop culture and serial killers and drugs and Saturday morning cartoons when we were kids. And we just started forming ideas as to like what kind of songs we would write, how we would dress. All the ideas came about before any of the music.
He had this idea of 50s pinup girls and serial killers and the dichotomy of both of them and kind of merging the two together.
And that's when the name Marilyn Manson came about.
And he actually showed me that MM, that logo, Marilyn Manson. And he says it was a culmination, Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson, the good and the bad, the black and the white.
The promo started immediately.
We started putting out flyers just with our names on it, upwards of 2 or 3 months before we had our first show.
We would just make up stickers and hand them to everybody we could, and we'd go around sticking on buildings, on stop signs.
And some were just really wrong, and each one would have something offensive to somebody.
He knew about self-promotion. He knew how to package it. At that time, I don't think he really cared too much about the product. He just wanted to sell it. He had asked if 25th Parallel could run an article about this band, Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids, and I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I thought it was a little bit weird. Have you played anywhere yet? Well, no. Do you have a demo tape yet? Well, no. Yeah, sure, what the hell, go ahead. And we got an intern to interview him, and he asked me if he could rewrite it, and I'm like, yeah, sure, have fun. Go ahead, make yourself look good. It was the first piece of press the Spooky Kids ever had.
It's hard to get a two-page full story, you know, about a band that's never even played a show.
He had written something along the lines of Marilyn Manson is going to take over the world and they don't care who they have to trample underfoot to get there. Pretty heady stuff considering that they hadn't played a note at that time.
I remember we were going to a creative writing class, and he just told me, like, I don't think I'm going to come back. I want to do the band. He just quit and never really looked back.
Coming up, Marilyn Manson proves to South Florida that he's already a master showman.
They would do things with like chicken feet strung across the stage to girls in cages dripping, chocolate sauce off their breasts.
Then, MTV has a bizarre encounter with the future of shock rock.
We wanted Gail. I came here to marry her. She's not here, I'm sad.
Can I say, I hate to disappoint you, man.
And later, the Manson transformation is complete.
We needed to call him anything but Brian.
He'd like to be called Mr. Manson. I always make sure that I call him Mr. Manson. I didn't want to get him upset.
Burdened by heredity, redneck